Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the English Globe, your place to learn English through real and meaningful stories about our world. My name is Adam, and I'm so happy to be here with you again. Whether you are listening from Asia, Europe, America, Africa, or anywhere else around the globe, I want you to know that you are part of our international classroom. Here, we not only learn English, but also understand the world together. We explore history, politics, culture, and ideas that help us think deeper and speak better. So, take a comfortable seat, maybe a cup of tea or coffee, and get ready for a very interesting and educational episode today.
Hello everyone, I'm Julia, and I want to join Adam in saying a warm welcome to all of you wonderful listeners. We're so happy that you're here with us on the English Globe. Every day we choose topics that help you improve your English vocabulary and listening skills. But at the same time, we want to open a window to the world, a world full of stories, lessons, and connections. Today's episode is one that helps us understand not only geography and history, but also global relations and peace. It's about a place that has become one of the most discussed topics in the world of international affairs, Taiwan.
Yes, that's right, Julia. Our topic for today is why Taiwan is so important to China. It's a topic that has deep historical roots, cultural meaning, and global importance. When people read the news or watch the headlines, they often see Taiwan mentioned when talking about China, the United States, or Asia in general. But not everyone knows the full story behind it. How Taiwan became what it is today, why China considers it such an important part of its national identity, and why countries around the world pay so much attention to this small but powerful island.
Exactly, Adam. Understanding Taiwan's story is not only important for political or historical reasons, it's also a great opportunity for English learners to expand their vocabulary and improve their comprehension skills while learning something valuable. When we talk about Taiwan, we touch on topics like history, culture, geography, technology, and even economics, all of which give you new words, new expressions, and new ideas to think about.
And that's what we do here at the English Globe. We believe that learning English should never be boring or limited to grammar books. When you connect the language with real-world stories, your learning becomes natural and powerful. Today's episode will help you understand how one island can become a center of world attention and why it plays such an important role in China's national story.
So, dear listeners, before we start diving into the story, we want to kindly ask you for a small favor. If you enjoy learning with us here on the English Globe, please take a moment to like this video. It really helps us grow and reach more learners around the world. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. We upload new educational podcasts every week, all designed to help you understand English and the world around you in a simple, clear, and enjoyable way.
Also, we would love to hear from you. Tell us in the comments where you are listening from. Maybe you're in India, Japan, Germany, or Brazil. Or perhaps you're listening from a small town somewhere quiet and peaceful. Wherever you are, we want to know. Write a short comment and say hello. You can also share your thoughts about today's topic. Why do you think Taiwan is so important to China? Do you think history, politics, or geography plays the biggest role? There's no right or wrong answer. We just want to hear your opinions.
Yes, sharing your thoughts helps not only you, but also other learners in our community. When you write in English, you practice your writing skills, and when you read other comments, you see how people from different countries think about the same topic. That's the beautiful part of the English Globe. We're not just teaching English, we're building a global classroom where everyone learns from each other.
Now let's talk a little bit about why this topic matters so much. You might wonder, why is Taiwan such a big issue between China and the rest of the world? Well, Taiwan is not a very large country in size, but it has a very big role in history, politics, and technology. It's a place where past and present meet, where identity and power come together, and where small decisions can affect the whole world.
That's true. Many people around the world hear about Taiwan in the news, but few really understand how deep the story goes. The connection between China and Taiwan is one of the most complex relationships in modern history. It's not only about geography, it's about history, memories, and identity. China sees Taiwan as part of its historical territory, while Taiwan has built its own democratic system, economy, and culture over the years. This creates a situation that requires understanding, respect, and communication.
Exactly. And for English learners, this topic is an amazing way to explore vocabulary related to international relations, geopolitics, culture, and economics. You'll hear terms like territory, sovereignty, diplomatic recognition, trade routes, and technology industries. These are not just big words. They're words that help you understand how the modern world works.
Yes, and we'll make sure to explain every idea in a simple and easy way so that everyone can follow. You don't need to be a political expert to enjoy today's podcast. All you need is curiosity and a love for learning. By the end of this episode, you'll not only understand why Taiwan is important to China, but also how the story of Taiwan teaches us about peace, progress, and identity.
Before we continue, I want to say that everything we share today is for educational purposes. Our goal is to explain history, culture, and global topics in a neutral and balanced way, without taking sides or promoting any political opinions. We believe education should be about understanding, not argument. When we learn more about the world, we become wiser, more patient, and more respectful toward others.
That's such a good point, Adam. It's easy to read news headlines and form opinions, but the real skill, especially for English learners, is to understand the story behind the story. What happened in the past? Why do people feel the way they do? What can we learn from it? That's the kind of thinking we want to encourage here. And this is why our topic today is so valuable.
So, dear listeners, stay with us as we go on a journey through time, from the early history of Taiwan to the present day, exploring how this island became a key part of China's history and the world's future. By understanding this story, you'll not only improve your English, but also open your mind to one of the most fascinating stories of modern Asia.
Yes, and as we go forward, try to listen carefully to the words and expressions we use. You can even write down new vocabulary and practice speaking them later. Remember, every story is a chance to learn something new about English, about the world, and about yourself. So get ready, dear friends, because this episode is going to be full of knowledge, clarity, and connection.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's start exploring the story behind Taiwan, its history, its meaning, and why it's so important to China.
To really understand why Taiwan is so important to China, we have to travel back in time. History gives us the keys to understanding today's world. Taiwan, which is officially known as the Republic of China, has a history full of changes, migrations, and transformations. For many centuries, it was not the highly developed and modern place we know today. It was a small island with native tribes, fishermen, and traders from nearby regions like China, Japan, and Southeast Asia.
That's right, Julia. The earliest people of Taiwan were Austronesian-speaking tribes, who are believed to be related to other island peoples of the Pacific and Southeast Asia. They lived from the land and sea, building their own cultures long before any large empire reached the island. Later, during the 1600s, traders and explorers began to notice Taiwan's location. It was a perfect spot for trade between China, Japan, and the rest of Asia.
In the 17th century, the Dutch and Spanish arrived on the island, competing for control of trade routes and ports. The Dutch East India Company built forts and trading posts in southern Taiwan, while the Spanish tried to establish a presence in the north. These European powers saw Taiwan as a useful stop for their ships traveling between Japan, China, and Southeast Asia. But their rule didn't last very long, because local forces and Chinese settlers from the nearby Fujian province began to arrive in larger numbers.
Yes, and one of the most important figures in Taiwan's early history was Zheng Chenggong, also known as Koxinga. He was a Chinese military leader who resisted the Qing dynasty and fought to restore the Ming dynasty after it fell in mainland China. In 1662, he drove the Dutch out of Taiwan and established control over the island. Koxinga and his followers made Taiwan a base for Chinese resistance against the Qing Empire. Although his dream of restoring the Ming never succeeded, his actions connected Taiwan more closely to Chinese history and culture.
After that, the Qing dynasty of China eventually gained control over Taiwan in 1683. For the next 2 centuries, Taiwan was governed as part of the Qing Empire. Many Chinese families moved from the mainland to Taiwan, especially from Fujian and Guangdong provinces. They brought their language, customs, and traditions, which shaped Taiwan's cultural identity. However, during this period, Taiwan was seen by the Qing government as a distant frontier rather than a central part of the empire.
That's a key point, Julia. Even though Taiwan was officially under Chinese rule, it was far away and not always carefully managed. The island had mountain tribes, settlers, and different groups that sometimes fought each other. But its population continued to grow, and by the 19th century, it had become an important agricultural and trading area. Then, something major happened, a war that changed Taiwan's destiny completely.
You're talking about the First Sino-Japanese War, right? That war took place in 1894 and 1895 between China and Japan. The conflict was mainly about influence over Korea, but when China lost the war, it also lost control of Taiwan. In 1895, through the Treaty of Shimonoseki, the Qing dynasty officially gave Taiwan to Japan. This marked the beginning of 50 years of Japanese rule over the island, and it completely changed Taiwan's direction. Exactly. The Japanese period is one of the most significant parts of Taiwan's modern history. From 1895 to 1945, Japan ruled Taiwan as a colony. During this time, Japan invested heavily in building roads, railways, schools, and industries. They modernized agriculture, improved public health, and tried to make Taiwan a model colony. But it was also a time of cultural pressure. The Japanese government wanted to make the people of Taiwan loyal to Japan, encouraging them to speak Japanese and follow Japanese customs. Yes, the Japanese influence can still be seen in Taiwan today, in architecture, food, and even some cultural habits. But while Japan developed Taiwan's economy, many Taiwanese people also resisted Japanese rule and wanted to keep their Chinese roots. When World War II ended in 1945, Japan was defeated, and according to international agreements made at that time, Taiwan was returned to Chinese administration. For many people in China, this was a moment of joy, the end of foreign rule and the return of an island they had long considered part of their homeland.
However, the situation in China itself was very complicated at that time. After the end of World War II, China was divided between 2 major political groups, the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the communists, led by Mao Zedong. The country was exhausted after years of war against Japan, and soon after, it entered another major conflict, the Chinese Civil War.
That's right. The civil war between the nationalists and the communists began again almost immediately after World War II. The nationalists controlled most of China at first, but the communists slowly gained more power, especially in the countryside. The fighting was intense and tragic, with millions of people affected. In 1949, the communists won the war and established the People's Republic of China on the mainland. The nationalists, after their defeat, retreated to Taiwan and continued to call themselves the Republic of China.
And that moment, the year 1949, is the real turning point in this story. From that time on, there were two governments, both claiming to represent China. One was the People's Republic of China, PRC, in Beijing, and the other was the Republic of China, ROC, in Taipei, Taiwan. Each side believed it was the true government of all China. This situation created a political division that still shapes relations between China and Taiwan today.
The split was not just political, it was also emotional and cultural. Families were separated, communication was cut off, and the two societies began to develop in very different directions. Mainland China went through the early decades of communist rule, land reforms, political movements, and isolation from the Western world. Meanwhile, Taiwan, under nationalist control, followed a very different path, one that we'll talk about more in the next section.
But before we move forward, let's reflect for a moment. What we see here is a story of connections and separations. For hundreds of years, Taiwan has been connected to China by geography, culture, and migration. But it has also been shaped by foreign powers, wars, and historical accidents. Its identity was built, layer by layer, native traditions, Chinese culture, Japanese modernization, and finally, the division that came after 1949.
Exactly, and that's why Taiwan's story is so complex. It's not just a simple question of belonging. It's about history, identity, and transformation. When China looks at Taiwan, it sees centuries of shared heritage and a piece of history it considers unfinished. When people in Taiwan look at themselves, they see a story of survival, adaptation, and growth. Understanding this emotional and historical background helps us see why the relationship between the two is so sensitive and important even today.
And for English learners, this part of history gives us so many useful words and ideas, words like dynasty, colony, treaty, civil war, and heritage. These are key terms when talking about international relations and world history. As we continue, keep listening for these words and think about how history influences the world we live in now.
So, dear listeners, as we continue our journey through time, we now move to a very important chapter, the time after the Chinese Civil War. This is when Taiwan and mainland China began to walk on completely different paths, building two systems, two governments, and two futures. And that story will help us understand even more deeply why Taiwan is so important to China and to the rest of the world.
When we look at the story of Taiwan and China, the year 1949 stands out as one of the most important moments in modern Asian history. It was the year when everything changed, when two different governments began to exist under the same name, China. But to understand how that happened, we have to look more closely at what was going on in the years just before it, the time of the Chinese Civil War.
Yes, the Chinese Civil War is one of the most defining events in modern Chinese history. It wasn't just a fight for political power. It was a fight about the future of a nation. On one side were the nationalists, also called the Kuomintang, or KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek. They had ruled China after the fall of the Qing dynasty and believed in building a unified modern China, although under one-party control. On the other side were the communists, led by Mao Zedong, who wanted to create a new kind of society based on equality and the end of class divisions.
The civil war between these two forces had been going on and off, since the 1920s. But the final stage of the war began right after World War II, when Japan's occupation ended and power struggles inside China grew stronger. Both the nationalists and the communists wanted to take control of the territories that Japan had left behind. The country was deeply damaged. Its economy was broken, its people were tired from years of war, and its cities were in ruins. In this chaos, both sides tried to rebuild, but their goals and beliefs were completely opposite.
The nationalists had more soldiers and international recognition at first, but they were weakened by corruption, poor management, and a loss of public trust. Many people in rural China supported the communists because they promised land reforms and social equality. The Communists also built strong relationships with farmers, who made up most of China's population. Step by step, their power grew. By 1948, they were winning major battles, and the nationalist government began to lose control of large areas, including key cities like Beijing and Nanjing.
In 1949, the Communist forces achieved total victory. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood in Tiananmen Square in Beijing and officially declared the founding of the People's Republic of China, or PRC. It was a new beginning for the mainland, but it also marked a painful ending for the nationalists. Chiang Kai-shek and his remaining soldiers, along with many government officials and families, fled across the sea to the island of Taiwan. In total, about 2 million people left the mainland during that period.
When the nationalists arrived in Taiwan, they still called themselves the Republic of China, or ROC. For them, the move to Taiwan was not the end of their government. They believed it was only temporary. They hoped that one day they would return to the mainland and rule all of China again. Meanwhile, the Communist Party on the mainland saw itself as the true government of the entire Chinese nation, including Taiwan. That's how the division began. 2 governments, 2 systems, and one claim to represent all of China.
This separation created a unique political situation that has lasted for decades. For the first few years after 1949, both sides believed they were the real China. The PRC in Beijing considered Taiwan a rebel province, while the ROC in Taipei considered the mainland to be under temporary communist control. The world was divided too. During the Cold War, many Western countries, including the United States, continued to recognize the ROC government in Taiwan as the legitimate government of China. The People's Republic of China, on the other hand, was recognized mainly by the Soviet Union and its allies.
It was a time of tension and uncertainty. For people living in Taiwan, the arrival of the nationalists brought major changes. The new government introduced martial law, a strict form of military control that lasted for almost 40 years. Political freedoms were limited, and people were expected to support the Nationalist Party's goal of recovering the mainland. At the same time, Taiwan began to build strong institutions, improve education, and focus on national security. The government saw the island as the last hope of Chinese civilization during a difficult time.
For the people on the mainland, life under the new communist government was also full of dramatic change. Mao Zedong and his party began land reforms, redistributing land from rich landlords to poor farmers. The goal was to create an equal society, but the process was often harsh. The government also began campaigns to control prices, industries, and the media. It was a new system, one that focused on collective effort and socialist ideals. However, this also meant limited personal freedom and strict control over society.
And so, by the 1950s, 2 very different worlds began to form. One on the mainland under communist rule, and one on the island of Taiwan under nationalist rule. Although both sides spoke the same language and shared similar cultural traditions, their political and social systems moved in completely opposite directions. The mainland became a socialist country, while Taiwan developed as a capitalist one, with increasing ties to the Western world.
At that time, the idea of one China was central to both governments. Both the PRC and ROC said, "There is only one China, and we are it." Neither accepted the idea of 2 separate countries, but their interpretations were completely different. For Beijing, Taiwan was a province that needed to be reunited someday. For Taipei, the communist government on the mainland was seen as an illegitimate regime that had taken control by force. This disagreement created a long-lasting political conflict that still exists in some form today.
The United States played an interesting role during this period. In the early years after the Civil War, the US supported the ROC in Taiwan and helped it maintain international recognition. However, As time went on, global politics began to change. By the 1970s, the world began to recognize the People's Republic of China as the main representative of China. In 1971, the United Nations gave China's seat, which had been held by Taiwan, to Beijing. From that time forward, most countries accepted the PRC as the official government of China, though many still kept informal relations with Taiwan.
But let's go back for a moment and think about the human side of this story. Imagine being one of those people in 1949 who had to leave your home, your city, and your family behind to move to a new island. Many people who followed the nationalist government to Taiwan never returned to the mainland again. Their families were separated for decades. Communication was cut off, and letters between relatives were often impossible. For the older generation, it was a time of loss and uncertainty.
That's very true. And for the people who were already living in Taiwan before 1949, life also changed overnight. Suddenly, millions of newcomers arrived, soldiers, government workers, and their families, speaking different dialects, following new rules, and taking control of politics and society. The island became crowded and tense, but over time, these two groups began to mix, and a new Taiwanese society started to form, one that combined local traditions, Chinese culture, and a growing sense of its own identity.
These early decades set the foundation for what Taiwan would later become. While the government was strict and political freedoms were limited, the nationalists focused heavily on education, infrastructure, and economic reform. They built schools, roads, and industries, hoping to make Taiwan a strong base of development. And this investment, over time, led to Taiwan's economic miracle in the later years, something we'll explore in an upcoming section.
So, in short, the Chinese Civil War didn't just divide a country, it created two very different worlds that developed side by side for more than 7 decades. It shaped politics, culture, and identity on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. And even today, this historical separation continues to influence how China and Taiwan see each other and how the rest of the world interacts with them.
For English learners, understanding this period gives you important vocabulary like civil war, government in exile, martial law, recognition, and sovereignty. These are words that describe power, politics, and identity, ideas that are essential to understanding international relations.
Yes, and by studying topics like this, you not only improve your English skills, but also your ability to think critically about the world. You start to see how history shapes the present and how small decisions from the past can create long-term consequences.
So now that we understand how Taiwan became separated from the mainland, our next step will be to explore how these two sides developed after the split. How did Taiwan transform from a small island full of refugees into one of Asia's most successful economies? And how did China's rise on the mainland affect the relationship between the two? Those are questions we'll answer as we continue our journey.
Yes, and this part of the story is truly inspiring. It's about rebuilding, progress, and resilience. It shows how people, even after losing everything, can create something strong and beautiful from the ground up. And that's exactly what happened in Taiwan after 1949.
After the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949, two separate governments emerged, each claiming to be the true representative of China. On the mainland, the Communist Party established the People's Republic of China in Beijing, while the defeated nationalist government moved to Taiwan and continued to call itself the Republic of China. This division created a complex political situation in which both sides believed they were the rightful government of the same country, a claim that continues to shape international diplomacy today.
For decades, both Beijing and Taipei maintained the same fundamental belief that there is only one China. However, they completely disagreed about who should rule it. Beijing argued that Taiwan was a temporary breakaway region that would eventually return to the mainland, while Taipei insisted that it was still the legitimate authority for all Chinese territory. This clash of identity turned into a global question, forcing the rest of the world to decide which government to recognize as China, in the diplomatic and legal sense.
In 1971, this question reached its most important turning point when the United Nations voted to transfer China's seat from Taipei to Beijing. This meant that the People's Republic of China, based on the mainland, became the only officially recognized representative of China at the UN. For Taiwan, this was a major diplomatic setback because it lost its voice in international organizations, and most countries began to switch recognition to Beijing. The decision reflected global realities at the time, as China's influence and population made it impossible to ignore on the world stage.
Even after losing its UN seat, Taiwan continued to maintain strong informal relations with many nations. The United States, Japan, and several European countries, while officially recognizing Beijing as the government of China, developed what they call unofficial ties with Taiwan. This means they cooperate in trade, education, technology, and defense through special offices that act like embassies, but without the formal title. These connections show that Taiwan remains an active and important player in global affairs despite limited diplomatic recognition.
The language used in international diplomacy is very careful when it comes to Taiwan. Most countries adopt what is known as the One China policy, which acknowledges Beijing's position that there is only one China, but does not necessarily agree that Taiwan is part of it. This subtle choice of words allows governments to balance their relationships with both sides, recognizing Beijing officially while keeping close unofficial partnerships with Taipei. It's a fine example of how diplomacy often depends on words as much as on actions.
For English learners studying global issues, understanding this language of international recognition is very useful. Terms like de facto, meaning in practice, and de jure, meaning by law, are often used when describing Taiwan's position. Taiwan functions as a de facto independent country because it governs itself, holds democratic elections, and maintains its own economy. But it is not a de jure independent state, since it does not have full legal recognition as a separate nation in most international institutions.
This dual identity has created a unique situation that no other place in the world quite matches. Taiwan has its own government, flag, and military, yet it is officially seen by many countries as part of China. At the same time, Beijing views Taiwan's independence as unacceptable and continues to see reunification as a historical mission. This ongoing disagreement influences global trade, military strategy, and even the use of language in international relations, showing how powerful words and recognition can be in shaping global peace and stability.
So when we say two governments, one claim, we are really describing more than just a political argument. We are talking about history, identity, and the struggle for legitimacy in a world where recognition is as valuable as territory. Taiwan's story is not simply about independence or unification. It's about how a small island can stand at the center of global diplomacy and continue to define its place in a system built on compromise, careful language, and the constant balance of international power. After the Second World War, Taiwan was a very different place from the one we know today. The island was poor, much of its infrastructure had been damaged, and its economy relied mostly on agriculture. When the nationalist government arrived in 1949 after losing the Civil War, it brought millions of people but very limited resources. The population grew quickly, but jobs and industries were scarce. Life was difficult, and few could have imagined that this small island would one day become one of the richest and most advanced economies in all of Asia.
The turning point came when Taiwan's leaders decided to focus on rebuilding the economy from the ground up. They introduced major land reforms that broke up large estates and gave farmland to small farmers, which helped increase productivity and reduce inequality. At the same time, they began to invest heavily in education, ensuring that children across the island could attend school. This focus on learning became one of the key foundations for Taiwan's future success. A well-educated population would later provide the skills and creativity needed to drive the country's rapid industrial growth.
In the 1950s and 1960s, Taiwan began to shift from an agricultural society to an industrial one. The government encouraged small factories to produce goods for export, such as textiles, shoes, and electronics. Foreign aid, particularly from the United States, also helped Taiwan develop its infrastructure and trade networks. As global demand for manufactured goods grew, Taiwan became known for its hard-working labor force and its ability to produce high-quality products at competitive prices. This was the beginning of what economists later called the Taiwan Miracle, a period of fast and sustained economic growth that changed the nation's destiny.
Another major factor behind Taiwan's success was its commitment to education and research. The government understood that in order to compete globally, it needed not only workers, but innovators, people who could think critically, design technology, and build modern industries. Universities and technical institutes were expanded, and companies were encouraged to invest in science and engineering. Over time, this strategy created a highly skilled workforce and allowed Taiwan to move from producing simple goods to making more advanced products like computers, chips, and precision machinery.
By the 1980s and 1990s, Taiwan had completely transformed its economy. It was no longer just an exporter of low-cost products, but a leader in innovation and technology. The island became home to many new industries, and one of the most important among them was semiconductor manufacturing. Semiconductors are the tiny chips that power everything from smartphones and laptops to cars and satellites. They are the heart of the modern digital world, and Taiwan quickly became one of the biggest producers on the planet, setting the standard for quality and efficiency in this critical field.
The most famous company leading this revolution is the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, better known as TSMC. Founded in 1987, TSMC introduced a new business model that changed the global tech industry. Instead of designing its own chips, the company focused only on manufacturing chips for other companies. This allowed it to specialize deeply and perfect its production process. Today, TSMC produces chips for many of the world's largest technology companies, including Apple, NVIDIA, and Qualcomm. Its products are essential for powering artificial intelligence, smartphones, and countless digital devices we use every day.
What makes TSMC and Taiwan's semiconductor industry so impressive is their precision and reliability. Producing chips requires extremely advanced technology, clean rooms where even a speck of dust can ruin a product, and machines that can print circuits only a few nanometers wide. Taiwan's engineers have mastered these processes better than almost anyone else in the world. Because of this, more than half of the world's advanced semiconductors come from Taiwan, making the island a vital link in the global technology supply chain and a key partner for major economies.
Taiwan's economic rise is often seen as part of the larger story of Asia's transformation during the late 20th century. Like South Korea, Singapore, and Hong Kong, Taiwan focused on discipline, education, and innovation. But what makes Taiwan unique is how it combined these values with democratic development and a spirit of entrepreneurship. Small, family-owned businesses grew into global corporations, and young people were encouraged to think creatively, to study abroad, and to bring new ideas back home. This combination of knowledge, hard work, and adaptability became the true engine of Taiwan's success.
For English learners, Taiwan's story is not just about numbers or factories. It's a story about how determination, education, and smart planning can completely change a nation's future. From poverty and political uncertainty, Taiwan built a system based on knowledge and opportunity. Today, the island stands as a symbol of how even a small country can make a big impact on the world through innovation and effort. It also shows how global cooperation, sharing ideas, trading goods, and respecting talent can lift societies and create prosperity for millions of people.
So when we talk about Taiwan today, we're not just speaking about a place with political tension or historical complexity. We are talking about a modern economic miracle built through resilience and vision. The world depends on Taiwan's technology, and its people have shown that progress is possible when education, industry, and global cooperation come together. The island's success continues to inspire economists, students, and dreamers across the world, proving that even in the most difficult circumstances, growth and transformation can happen through the power of human potential and innovation. When we look at a map of East Asia, we can immediately see why Taiwan's location is so important. The island sits in the western Pacific Ocean, right along one of the busiest shipping routes in the world. It lies between Japan to the north, the Philippines to the south, and the vast Chinese mainland to the west. Because of this position, Taiwan acts as a natural gateway between the Pacific Ocean and the Asian continent. Every year, thousands of ships carrying energy supplies, raw materials, and electronic goods pass through waters near Taiwan, making the island essential for global trade and economic stability.
If you imagine the Pacific as a huge blue highway of global commerce, Taiwan sits right at the center of that highway. Its ports connect Asia's industrial powerhouses, like Japan, South Korea, and China, to the rest of the world. This is why many experts call Taiwan a geopolitical bridge, linking East Asia to the West through trade, communication, and technology. Its central location also makes it an ideal base for logistics, shipping, and air transport. For any country that depends on trade, keeping the sea lanes around Taiwan open and secure is absolutely vital for their economic safety and long-term growth.
Beyond trade, Taiwan's position is also critical for regional security. It lies within what military strategists call the first island chain, a line of islands stretching from Japan down through Taiwan and the Philippines, all the way to Malaysia. This chain forms a natural barrier between the Pacific Ocean and the Asian mainland. Control of this line has major implications for naval power, air defense, and regional influence. If any single country were to dominate the first island chain, it would gain significant control over the movement of ships and military forces in the Western Pacific region.
This is why Taiwan's security matters not only to China and the United States, but to the entire Asia-Pacific region. For China, reunifying with Taiwan is part of its long-term strategic goal to secure its coastline and extend its maritime presence into the Pacific. For the United States and its allies, maintaining Taiwan's autonomy helps to ensure that the Pacific remains open and balanced. This balance of power is what keeps trade routes free and prevents conflicts from spreading across the region. In this way, Taiwan's stability plays a key role in maintaining peace and order in East Asia.
If we describe the geography verbally for our listeners, imagine standing on the east coast of Taiwan and looking out to the vast Pacific Ocean. Beyond that horizon lie the shipping routes to America, Australia, and Europe. Now, if you turn westward, you see the Chinese mainland, just about 160 kilometers away across the Taiwan Strait. That narrow body of water may seem small, but it carries huge geopolitical weight. Whoever controls the Taiwan Strait can influence the movement of goods, energy supplies, and even military forces that travel between the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean.
Another way to visualize Taiwan's importance is to think of it as a guard post between two worlds, the Pacific world of open sea routes and the continental world of Asia's great powers. The island's location allows whoever controls it to monitor and, if necessary, manage the flow of trade and information across the region. This is why so many countries, from Japan to Australia, follow developments around Taiwan closely. They understand that any major change in Taiwan's status could affect the entire Indo-Pacific security structure, influencing everything from shipping insurance to defense alliances.
Taiwan's geography also gives it unique defensive advantages. The island is surrounded by rugged coastlines, with mountain ranges that rise sharply from the sea. These natural features make it difficult for any large-scale invasion to succeed. Historically, this terrain has provided Taiwan with both protection and isolation. It also means that maintaining strong air and naval defenses is critical for the island's security. Taiwan has developed advanced radar systems, modern airfields, and coastal defenses to monitor its surrounding waters, ensuring that it can respond quickly to any potential threats.
In addition to defense, Taiwan's location supports international cooperation in areas like disaster response, maritime safety, and environmental protection. Because it lies in a region often affected by typhoons and earthquakes, Taiwan has developed advanced technologies for early warning and emergency management. These systems are not only used domestically, but also shared with neighboring countries, helping to strengthen regional security and humanitarian networks. This demonstrates that Taiwan's role in the Pacific is not only strategic in military terms, but also vital for cooperation and community safety.
When we consider the broader picture, Taiwan's strategic importance combines geography, trade, and security into one interconnected story. Its central location supports global commerce, its natural defenses make it a stronghold in the Pacific, and its political situation keeps it at the heart of international attention. Understanding this geography helps us see why Taiwan's future stability is a concern not only for Asia, but for the whole world. The island's safety and openness ensure that global trade continues smoothly and that peace remains possible in one of the most dynamic regions on Earth.
So when we think about Taiwan, we are not just looking at a small island on a map. We are looking at a place whose position affects millions of lives and billions of dollars in global trade every single day. Taiwan is a crossroads of cultures, economies, and security interests. Its location in the Pacific gives it power far beyond its size, and that power is built not on weapons or politics alone, but on geography itself, the quiet yet unstoppable force that shapes nations and connects the world's most important trade and defense systems. When we think about Taiwan today, one of the first things that comes to mind is its extraordinary technology industry, particularly semiconductors, also known as computer chips. These tiny devices are used in almost every modern product, from smartphones and laptops to cars, medical equipment, and even satellites. Taiwan has become a global leader in producing these chips, especially the most advanced ones that other countries find difficult to manufacture. This makes the island not just an economic player, but a crucial part of the global supply chain, affecting millions of businesses and consumers around the world every single day.
Exactly, Julia. Both the United States and China rely heavily on Taiwan's technology. American companies, for example, design cutting-edge microchips but depend on Taiwanese factories, especially TSMC, to manufacture them at the highest quality. Similarly, China imports a significant portion of its advanced chips from Taiwan to power everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. This interdependence shows how deeply connected the world has become through technology, where even a small disruption in Taiwan could have ripple effects on global markets, electronics, and communication systems, demonstrating the island's strategic economic significance.
Experts often describe this situation as a silicon shield, which means that Taiwan's advanced technology industry gives the island a unique form of protection. Because the world depends on its chips, other countries have a strong interest in maintaining Taiwan's security and stability. The silicon shield does not mean Taiwan is invulnerable, but it does create a type of global deterrence. Countries recognize that any threat to Taiwan could disrupt the entire high-tech industry, affecting businesses and economies everywhere. This concept highlights the power of economic influence and technological leadership in international affairs.
The global technology race also shows how Taiwan's fate is linked to international cooperation and competition. Countries invest in technology research, supply chains, and innovation hubs, often collaborating across borders while also competing in markets. Taiwan's dominance in semiconductors is a key example of this dynamic. It not only exports chips worldwide, but also influences technological development in the United States, Europe, and Asia. This means that Taiwan is no longer a regional concern, but a central part of global economic stability and the development of next-generation technologies like artificial intelligence, 5G networks, and electric vehicles.
From an educational perspective, this situation also teaches English learners and students of international affairs about the language of global economics. Terms like supply chain, high-tech industry, semiconductor, and interdependence are used frequently in discussions about Taiwan. Understanding these terms helps us see why a relatively small island can have a global impact. Taiwan's high-tech industry shows how expertise, innovation, and strategic production can influence economies worldwide, demonstrating the powerful role that technology plays in connecting countries and shaping international relationships.
It's also important to remember that Taiwan's technological success is the result of decades of planning, education, and investment in research and development. The government, universities, and private companies have worked together to create a workforce capable of handling the most complex manufacturing processes. This combination of human capital, infrastructure, and innovation has allowed Taiwan to dominate in areas where even major powers like the United States and China cannot produce enough advanced chips themselves. The result is a unique form of security and influence that comes from economic and technological strength rather than military power.
The Silicon Shield also demonstrates the broader lessons of globalization. The world is interconnected, and no country is fully independent when it comes to essential technology. Taiwan's high-tech industry ties its future directly to the entire global economy. Every chip it produces moves through international markets, powering industries, driving innovation, and enabling digital life. By understanding this connection, we can see why countries invest in technological development, why trade policies matter, and why international stability is so closely linked to the flow of technology from Taiwan to the rest of the world.
In conclusion, Taiwan's role in the global technology race is a clear example of how economic strength and innovation can provide influence and protection in today's interconnected world. While the island is small in size, its contribution to the world's semiconductor supply makes it indispensable. By producing the chips that power modern life, Taiwan not only strengthens its own economy, but also becomes a critical partner for every country that relies on electronics, communication, and technological progress, showing how a local industry can have worldwide importance.
For learners of English and international affairs, this section emphasizes the language and concepts that describe global interdependence. Words like supply chain, manufacturing hub, high-tech, and interconnected appear in real discussions about Taiwan and the world economy. By studying Taiwan's technological importance, we understand both global economics and how language helps explain complex issues. Taiwan's story shows that innovation, trade, and cooperation connect even a small island to billions of people around the world, making it essential in today's modern economy.
When we talk about Taiwan, it is very important to remember that the island is more than just a political or economic actor. It is also a vibrant society with a rich culture and history. Taiwan is home to a diverse population that includes descendants of Chinese immigrants, indigenous peoples, and families with roots in Japan and other parts of Asia. People in Taiwan celebrate a variety of traditions and festivals, such as Lunar New Year, the Dragon Boat Festival, and the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival, all of which reflect both historical Chinese roots and local Taiwanese adaptations, creating a unique cultural blend that is visible in everyday life.
Exactly, Adam. Taiwan's democracy also plays a huge role in shaping its cultural identity. Citizens freely participate in elections, express opinions through protests, and engage in debates about their society's future. This political freedom has influenced the younger generation, who often identify more as Taiwanese rather than Chinese. They are proud of their local language, which includes Mandarin, Hokkien, Hakka, and indigenous languages, and they value the democratic freedoms that allow them to study, work, and speak openly about the society they want to build.
Language is one of the most interesting ways culture shows itself in Taiwan. Street signs, newspapers, and schools use Mandarin, but many families also speak Hokkien or Hakka at home. Indigenous communities have their own languages, songs, and stories that continue to be taught to young people. Taiwanese culture is also expressed through arts, crafts, and cuisine, from traditional calligraphy and temple architecture to modern art galleries and popular street food. This mix of old and new demonstrates how Taiwan honors its history while embracing global influences and modern life.
Another fascinating aspect of Taiwanese culture is the way modernity and tradition coexist side by side. In cities like Taipei or Kaohsiung, skyscrapers and high-tech companies operate alongside ancient temples and night markets that have been running for decades. Festivals fill the streets with music, lanterns and dances, while cafes and modern shopping centers attract young people who live global lifestyles. Taiwanese society finds a balance between preserving heritage and adopting new ideas, which makes it dynamic, colorful, and very human. A society that evolves while keeping strong links to its roots.
Food culture is also an essential part of identity in Taiwan. Night markets offer a wide variety of local dishes, from stinky tofu and oyster omelets to bubble tea, which has become famous worldwide. Families and communities often gather for meals during special occasions, reinforcing social bonds and passing down traditions. Cuisine, just like language and festivals, is a way for people to feel connected to their history while sharing these experiences with younger generations and international visitors. Through these cultural practices, Taiwan's people express both continuity and creativity in their everyday lives.
The arts and music scene in Taiwan is equally vibrant, reflecting its cultural diversity. Traditional puppet shows, opera performances, and folk dances continue to be celebrated alongside modern pop music, film, and digital media. Universities and art schools encourage students to study both Taiwanese traditions and global trends, producing artists who can navigate both worlds. This integration of heritage and innovation shapes not only cultural output but also social values, teaching young people the importance of respect for the past while being open to change and experimentation.
For English learners, Taiwan's cultural story is a great opportunity to learn real-life vocabulary and expressions. Words like festival, heritage, tradition, democracy, community, and night market appear naturally in conversation and storytelling. Listening to discussions about culture, identity, and daily life helps learners understand how language is used to describe human experiences, not just politics or economics. Taiwan demonstrates that society and identity are built through language, customs, and everyday interactions, offering a rich and engaging topic for learners at all levels.
In the end, Taiwan's identity is much more than a political debate. It is the sum of its people, traditions, celebrations, and daily life. Its democratic society allows citizens to shape their own culture, and its young generation continues to redefine what it means to be Taiwanese. From temples and night markets to high-tech cities and universities, Taiwan shows how history, innovation, and community come together to create a living, breathing culture. Understanding this side of Taiwan helps listeners appreciate the island not only as a place on the map, but as a human society with stories, values, and life that resonate far beyond politics.
By exploring culture, language, festivals, and daily life, we can see that Taiwan is more than headlines or international debates. It is a society full of warmth, creativity, and resilience. Its people honor traditions, embrace new ideas, and live in ways that reflect both history and modernity. For English learners, hearing natural conversation about culture provides valuable examples of vocabulary, sentence structure, and context, helping them connect language learning with real human experiences and global understanding. Taiwan's story reminds us that identity is lived, celebrated, and shared in countless small and meaningful ways. Today, Taiwan and China maintain a complex relationship that affects millions of people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Despite political tensions, trade between the two is extensive, with goods such as electronics, machinery, and agricultural products moving across the waters every day. Many Taiwanese businesses operate in mainland China, and travel between the two regions continues for tourism, education, and family visits. This economic and social interaction shows that even with political disagreements, practical cooperation remains essential for the well-being of both societies, connecting economies, families, and communities in ways that are vital and ongoing.
At the same time, cross-strait relations face ongoing challenges. Both sides have different political goals and visions for the future, which creates tension and uncertainty. International observers often encourage dialogue to prevent misunderstandings, and both Taiwan and China participate in limited exchanges to maintain communication channels. While some disputes remain unresolved, there are also areas of hope, such as cooperation in healthcare, education, and environmental initiatives. This demonstrates that careful diplomacy, patience, and mutual respect are key to managing a relationship that is both sensitive and deeply intertwined.
International efforts play an important role in keeping peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Countries such as the United States, Japan, and members of the European Union follow developments closely, offering diplomatic support, encouraging dialogue, and providing frameworks for conflict prevention. Multilateral organizations and agreements also emphasize the importance of calm negotiation and cooperation. By promoting stability and communication, the international community helps reduce risks, ensuring that trade, travel, and cultural exchanges can continue safely, and that both sides have opportunities to address issues peacefully.
For English learners, understanding the language used in diplomacy is very useful. Words like dialogue, cooperation, stability, negotiation, and multilateral often appear in conversations about international relations. Listening to these terms in context helps learners understand how nations communicate and how global issues are managed with careful, balanced language. Cross-strait relations provide a real-life example of how complex problems are handled with patience, communication, and practical solutions, rather than conflict or force.
Even with challenges, it is possible to have a realistic but optimistic perspective on the future. Taiwan and China continue to rely on each other for trade and travel, and many people on both sides hope for peaceful coexistence. While political differences remain, economic ties and personal relationships often encourage collaboration and understanding. By focusing on common interests and shared needs, such as commerce, education, and cultural exchange, both sides demonstrate that cooperation can exist alongside political disagreement, showing that diplomacy, pragmatism, and mutual respect can guide relations in positive ways.
This section also highlights how global awareness is important for learners of English and international relations. Observing Taiwan-China relations teaches useful vocabulary and sentence structures to discuss international issues clearly and calmly. Phrases such as cross-strait relations, peaceful coexistence, and diplomatic channels help learners understand real-world conversations about politics and economics without using biased or controversial language. By studying these examples, learners gain insight into the careful, precise communication that diplomacy requires in the modern world.
In summary, today's Taiwan-China relationship is complex but functional. Trade, travel, and communication continue to connect the two regions, even while political disagreements persist. International efforts support peace and stability, providing frameworks for dialogue and cooperation. For learners, this situation demonstrates how real-world diplomacy works in practice. Careful, measured language, negotiation, and mutual respect are essential. The picture may not be perfect, but it is realistic, showing both the challenges and possibilities for continued peaceful interaction.
Ultimately, Taiwan and China today illustrate a delicate balance of history, politics, and everyday life. Citizens, businesses, and governments navigate this complexity daily, demonstrating that even in tense circumstances, collaboration is possible. By focusing on shared goals and common interests, both sides create pathways for understanding, commerce, and cultural exchange. For learners of English, this conversation provides clear examples of diplomatic vocabulary and sentence structure, helping them understand how international relations operate calmly and constructively in the modern world. As we conclude today's discussion about Taiwan and China, it's important to reflect on the lessons the world can learn from this story. One key lesson is the value of communication. When countries and societies communicate openly and respectfully, they can manage differences without conflict. Listening carefully to each other, asking questions, and understanding historical context helps reduce misunderstandings. For Taiwan and China, decades of dialogue, even if limited, have allowed trade, travel, and cultural exchange to continue despite political disagreements, showing how communication is a cornerstone of peaceful coexistence.
Another important lesson comes from understanding history. Taiwan's current situation cannot be separated from its past, from the end of the Chinese Civil War to economic transformation and the growth of democracy. By studying history carefully, we see why people, governments, and societies act as they do today. History also teaches patience. Change is gradual, and peaceful solutions often require long-term thinking. Learners can see that nations, like individuals, carry the lessons of the past forward, using them to make better decisions and avoid repeating mistakes, which is a critical concept in global affairs.
Respecting different perspectives is also essential. People in Taiwan, China, and around the world may have different views about politics, identity, and culture. Recognizing these differences without judgment allows for cooperation and understanding. For English learners, this is a useful skill in both language and life. When we describe international issues, it is important to use neutral, clear, and respectful language. Terms such as perspective, dialogue, and coexistence appear frequently in real-world discussions, teaching us how to speak about sensitive topics thoughtfully while learning vocabulary that is practical and meaningful.
Global awareness and education are another key takeaway. By learning about Taiwan, China, and their relationship, we gain more than language skills. We develop a broader understanding of the world. Knowledge about geography, culture, economics, and diplomacy helps learners think critically and connect concepts across subjects. Studying international issues strengthens problem-solving, communication, and analytical skills, which are useful not only for English but also for participating as informed citizens in global conversations. Awareness and curiosity are as important as vocabulary and grammar in language learning.
Ultimately, today's story reminds us that peace, education, and unity are central to human progress. Countries, communities, and individuals all benefit when people listen carefully, respect differences, and work together to find solutions. Taiwan's story, including its economic growth, cultural richness, and strategic importance, provides real examples of how cooperation and understanding create opportunities for development and stability. The world may have challenges, but lessons from Taiwan and China show that thoughtful communication, shared knowledge, and mutual respect can guide societies toward peaceful outcomes.
As we finish this episode, we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us on the English Globe. Your attention, curiosity, and commitment to learning English and understanding global issues are deeply appreciated. We encourage you to reflect on today's discussion, think about what it teaches us about communication, history, and respect, and consider how these lessons can apply in your own life. Sharing thoughts and experiences helps everyone learn and grow together in understanding the world.
We would love to hear from you, dear listeners. Please leave a comment telling us where you are listening from and what you think about today's topic. Sharing your opinion helps create a community of learners who are curious, respectful, and globally aware. Remember, studying language is not just about words. It is also about understanding people, cultures, and the connections that make our world complex and fascinating. Thank you for being part of the English Globe family, and we look forward to exploring more stories and lessons together in future episodes.
Before we say goodbye, let us remind you that every effort to learn, understand, and communicate contributes to a more peaceful and connected world. Continue practicing your English, stay curious about global events, and remember that knowledge combined with empathy is a powerful tool. From Taiwan's story, we learn that education, dialogue, and respect for differences are not just words. They are principles that can guide us toward a better future for everyone.
Thank you again for listening, and remember to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Your engagement helps us create meaningful content and inspires others to learn English while understanding the world around them. Peace, curiosity, and learning go hand in hand, and we are grateful to share this journey with you here at the English Globe.